Welcome to Let's Be Well Together podcast. We're your wellness check-in team. Join us each week or when you can. We enjoy exploring wellness concepts and reminding you to make time for wellness.
This is episode 71.
We hope our territorial acknowledgement improves allyship with Indigenous people within a reconciliation process. We're on the Haldeman Tract, located on the traditional territories of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. We acknowledge the presence and traditional knowledge, laws, and philosophies of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land.
Welcome to another week of Let's Be Well Together podcast. I'm Isabelle Sinclair, here with one of my good friends, Ciara Fletcher.
Hi everybody, I'm Ciara Fletcher. I'm super excited to be here and chat some more with Isabelle.
Ciara and I were talking off the air about challenges, co-op, and how it helps personal development. So Ciara, if you don't mind me asking, how do you feel that challenges interplay with personal development?
Well, that's a great question, Isabelle. So something that I've noticed a bit more in my life, especially this term, being a co-op student and just getting more into routine with university, is how often challenges present themselves and how, as a person, I become very scared by challenges and I tend to almost freeze or shut down internally. And when I face a challenge, I just want it to go away. And I think, what is the benefit of this challenge? I don't think of anything good that comes out of challenges, or so I used to. And I find that now, being on my co-op term and navigating work environments and different challenges just often present themselves. And I've learned to not run away from challenges the way I used to. And I think the biggest thing is now I see a challenge and I think this is really going to help my future. And if I didn't experience that challenge, my future wouldn't have better grown. I wouldn't have been able to navigate that hard, windy road.
I really loved how you mentioned that you face your challenges head on as opposed to kind of running away from them or choosing not to learn anything from them. How does the experience differ from when you're facing these challenges and once you've overcome them and you're looking back and learning things about yourself?
Yeah, so I would say when I'm facing a challenge, whether it's a challenging school assignment or a task in the workplace that just feels very overwhelming, how am I going to achieve this? In the moment, you feel some of those mental wellness aspects. So you're stressed, you just think, how can I do this? Or what resources could I use? Or you could even get some self-comparison. I know in my situation, sometimes I feel like maybe other people are understanding this task better than I am, or I'm just not going to achieve this task. And you can apply that to, again, the workplace, being a co-op student or in school. And then when you look back on it, the stress is gone. You figured out your situation. I often think, wow, if I did not go through that, I would not be prepared for my future. So in our case, if we're going to law school or we're lawyers or we're in any 9 to 5 or more hours full-time job, if you didn't deal with that stressful work assignment, school assignment, the deadline that felt scary, the tech programs you never used before that you don't understand how you're going to wrap your mind around it, you never got that chance to try. I think that's the biggest thing when I also consider why I'm doing co-op and why I'm doing school is if I didn't do school, I didn't do co-op and I just joined the workforce, would I have those skills, social skills, hard skills? Probably not. So when I'm in a situation, what I'm trying to say is rather than get terrified and run away from it, I try to think I'm going to look back on this, like as you proposed in your question, and thank myself that I went through that.
That's really interesting. And it sounds like in your case that resiliency is going to pay off in your future career. I know for me, from my personal experiences within the co-op stream, which I know we both know very well, the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows, I've learned through my experiences that rejection is redirection in a sense. It places you at the right place in the right time. I know that for the co-op position I have right now, I got rejected in cycle 1, but I got this amazing position that I'm so happy in cycle 2, and that wouldn't have happened without rejection. How do you feel about rejection, and do you have any tips to overcome the sense of vulnerability and hurt that may come with it?
That's a good question, and I think I'm going to actually answer it with a curve. So rather than rejection, I think it's good to talk about comparison before rejection. So talking about the cycles for those viewers that are unfamiliar. In the co-op program, you enter in a cycle, you have all these job postings, you interview, you get ranked, and then if you don't get matched with a job, you move on to the next cycle. So for me, I almost feel the rejection of in advance. So if I don't get a job in cycle 1, what does that say about me? But I shouldn't be so hard on myself. So many people don't get a job in cycle 1. And the biggest thing is it doesn't mean that you are less than or more than, but I just find that I'm very hard on myself and I need to always be the best I can be. So I hold myself to standards. while you may have dealt with a sense of rejection, I almost deal with the struggle of holding myself to so many standards so I don't feel rejection. And I don't know which one's worse. They're probably both pretty bad. But a good question for you then is, have you ever felt that standard that you hold yourself, and how did it make you feel?
Yeah, for sure. I would say that I hold myself to unattainable standards, and I think it stems from wanting the best for myself and only wanting success in my life. Whereas I feel that overcoming challenges determines your character and really helps you develop these soft and hard skills that help you throughout your career. So I would say that when I'm applying through co-op cycles, I tend to apply to really known companies when I don't even have the specific qualifications. And I feel that when really well-known companies reject me, it means that I'm not good enough. Whereas maybe it's just we don't have compatible skill sets. Sometimes you're not compatible with a company and vice versa. I don't think people consider that maybe the company is not compatible to you. Mm-hmm. It's not one-sided, it's two-sided. And I just feel like maintaining kind of a grounded perspective is really important to not being so vulnerable to these challenges you may face.
You make a really good point about how you have to consider in interviews. I know we're going more on the career conversation now, but it's not only you getting interviewed by the employer, it's you're trying to make sure that you're a good fit for them as well. And I think that's a really good way to be resilient and overcome challenges, is to realize, or when you're being hard on yourself, is to realize that, you know, you're also looking for something that works for you. And with that, I actually have a question for you. What inspires you in those tough situations? So what are some tools you might use to think about?
I always try and keep myself grounded and trying not to be hurt by rejection or by challenges. I'm someone that has been working on taking criticism better. I've been known to take criticism in a poor way, whereas I really want to become like the higher version of myself and take criticism with a grain of salt and not take it personally. It's on my work, not on my like value of self.
Mm-hmm. So I find something with challenges and achievements that I find in my personality is I see the highs as not as much of an achievement as my lows. So a good example is I won a scholarship not so long ago. Very big achievement, but unfortunately the day that I did win it, I was just dealing with the challenges and overcoming some things, and I was being very hard on myself. And of course I was extremely excited about it, but there's just something to say about when you have the highs and the lows and one way more than the other. And one thing with personal growth that I want to get to is allowing those highs to be weighted more than the low. When you have an achievement, rather than shutting it down because something bad happened to you that day or that week, or you had a challenge, just appreciating it for how it is. It's definitely something I need to work on in my personality, that you can have good news and you can have bad news, and you really have to think about that good news. So when I won my scholarship, I could have been 10 times more excited, but I was facing a just personal challenge that I was having trouble overcoming. And looking back on it, it's something that I wish I would have been a bit more happy for and not so focused on the negative that happened. So how do you feel about those two battles almost, when you have the good news and the bad news? And are you also like me where the bad news really weighs a lot more, unfortunately?
Yeah, unfortunately, I am kind of like that as well. I find that negative experiences, they have a bigger power over the psyche, in my opinion. So in those moments, I try to just gain like a perspective of the whole situation, because my whole philosophy on life is all about perspective and how you choose to see things and experience things. And another thing I really like to keep in mind is this challenge going to matter down the road? Mm-hmm. Or is this just like a momentary hardship? So in the case of you winning your scholarship, I can definitely see how the one negative experience would outweigh such a positive experience, such as winning a scholarship. I think it's really important to mention the perspective side of things and just trying to find the positive and the negative.
I guess another question to segue is, are there challenges, so physical or mental, that have made you feel alive? So rather than talk about challenges being challenging and, you know, being a little difficult, has there been a challenge that has actually benefited you?
I would say that the challenge doesn't necessarily make me feel alive, but overcoming the challenges make me feel alive. And I find that when people go through challenges, and I know from personal experiences, once you overcome that, you realize the breadth of like human emotions and how deep things can be. And once you've came back up to the surface from drowning from so long, if that makes sense. You just feel such a newfound sense of relief, and I find that it puts things into perspective. And after overcoming challenges, I tend to evaluate, like, do I ever want to put myself in that position again, or should I move on to better things in order to prevent that from ever happening again?
Perfect. And I actually have a quote right in front of me that I feel sums that up. And it says, everything negative, such as pressure, is an opportunity for me to rise. And I definitely try to have that mindset where this challenge, it's temporary, it will go away, and it just is making me a better person, whether that be a better student or a better worker. And I don't like to compare a lot, but I do try to think comparing to myself rather than others. If I didn't take that co-op, if I didn't take that extra course that I'm shaking my head over every day, I wouldn't be able to deal with that in the future. So again, kind of at the beginning of our conversation, the future career, if you're a lawyer, I'm a lawyer, our challenges are going to be a lot more than, one frustrating day. And I just try to think about, again, the quote, challenges are opportunities for me to rise.
I've had such a great time discussing these topics with you, Ciara. Thank you so much for taking our off-air conversation on the air for the viewers of Let's Be Well Together podcast. We look forward to possibly having another segment together in the future.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me. And I just hope that everyone, when they face a challenge, just think about how much it's really giving rise to growth and can make us all better humans at the end of it.
Guests are giving their time, expanding our minds. Today's interview is in the category of economic wellness. The cost of a home is an important part of financial well-being. Today we're chatting with real estate agent Lynne MacDonald from KW House Hunters. It's the first of a couple interviews we did. For the first, I asked Lynne about introductory info she'd provide to a first-time home buyer. And in the second, we'll talk about introductory info for a home seller. So welcome, Lynne.
Thanks for having me.
Lynne MacDonald is a residential real estate agent who serves Waterloo Region, Wellington, Perth, and Oxford counties. She's been licensed for 10 years. She's with KW House Hunter Group and a RE/MAX Hall of Fame recipient. Lynne is an agent for Indwell, which supports vulnerable adults dealing with mental health issues. She's married with 2 grown kids and has lived in Waterloo Region for 35 years. So Lynne, we only have 15 minutes, so we can't go over all the points you'd provide to a first-time home buyer in a meeting. But we can hit some highlights, and I'd like to give listeners a sense of things. So maybe could we start with, when is somebody ready to buy their first house? What are some things that they should have in place?
Well, the first thing they should always have in place is a mortgage approval. You have no idea what you're going to be able to shop for if you don't know what your budget is. And your budget will dictate not only the type of home you're buying, but also in this market, the location. So that's the first question we ask when somebody calls and says, we're ready to buy a house. And I always say, okay, have you spoken to either your bank or a mortgage broker and gotten a pre-approval? With the way rates have changed and the stress test on buyers, people think that they are approved for more, usually more than they are. So we like to get that really hard number before we actually start doing any kind of research or any kind of search.
I know sometimes, let's say I get a pre-approval at, say, $1 million. Mm-hmm. But I don't really want to spend $1 million. I want to spend $900,000. Right?
Nobody ever wants to spend their budget.
I find, like, if you go to an agent and say, look, I want $900,000.
Right.
But I could do $1 million if I had to. Is that something that tends to happen? You get pushed to the $1 million?
Well, it depends what you're looking for and how realistic you are in your search. Like if you come and say, I want to spend $900,000, but I want 3 acres and I want 10,000 square feet, and obviously not realistic. But we sort of work together to show you this is what your dollar will buy you. And then if you say, oh, but I actually want these extra things, then we start saying, okay, well, we might have to stretch that a little bit.
So a lot of this is kind of reality checks for the buyers.
Absolutely.
And what is a minimum down payment you have to make on a house?
5% is kind of the one that's thrown around for like first-time home buyers, but anyone can put down 5%.
Okay.
They've changed the down payment rules recently with the increase in prices. So 5%, you can do up to $500,000. Anything over between 5 and 999,000 has to be 10%. So if you bought a house for $750,000, you could do 5% on the first 500 and 10% on the second 250.
And that's for everybody, not
That's
just...
for everybody.
Okay.
And if you buy anything over $1 million, it's automatically 20% down.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
Did not know that.
Right. So those rules have changed sort of recently over the last couple of years. So people will be like, oh, I have 10% down. And it's like, okay, well, do you really?
Right.
You know, depending on what the home purchase is, you may not.
Yeah, now just to remind listeners too, we're talking about Ontario.
Yes.
We're not giving advice. We're just having a conversation.
Absolutely.
And so if you're interested in any of this stuff, you should consult with a real estate agent or
Mortgage broker,
maybe a lawyer.
Yeah.
Make sure you get the right advice so you know what's happening in your jurisdiction. What's your process when you're working with somebody calls you and they say, I want to buy my first house? How does it look in terms of the process?
So the first thing we do is we like to have a face-to-face meeting. We call it a buyer's meeting. We have a package that we give buyers, and it has examples of paperwork. It has examples of costs associated with purchasing besides the actual cost of the house. So those are some things that people don't really know about. We talk about the market. We talk about obviously their wants, their needs. That's the exciting part. And then we sort of squish that into some reality checks. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes. And then if their budget doesn't match sort of the location we want, we discuss, okay, are you willing to, we call it drive till you can afford it. So heading outside of town, maybe to purchase, maybe you get more bang for your buck.
Sheila and I used to watch a lot of the shows on TV about trying to buy the house and then you fix it up and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And kind of matched our experience too from when we started, which was there's a lot of education that you need because you have these assumptions that you can get this for this price and live wherever you want. And I imagine it can be frustrating for buyers sometimes when they get that reality check.
Oh, absolutely. And especially, and not just not to pick on sort of younger buyers. However, most of them, if they lived in mom and dad's house. Well, mom and dad probably didn't start off in, 3,000 square feet with granite counters and hardwood floors, right? So there's a bit of that reality check that I remember one of the first time home buyers I ever took out. She was like, what is that on the counters? And I said, that's called laminate. She said, oh, I just thought everybody like granite was just, kind of standard. And I was like, no, that's not how that works.
We didn't have a house for 11 years after we got married. We rented and only kind of got lucky in a way to get a down payment, which is a whole other story. Mm-hmm. And I remember our first apartment, we lived in Montreal and it was very plain and we had to fix it all up and clean it. And there was nothing granite.
Yeah.
Me.
Yeah.
So that's a good point.
Yeah. So, sometimes you really do have to give sort of a reality check in the nicest way possible. Through the process, there's a lot of reality checks. And so I try to take the pressure off buyers, especially in this market, because it is quite difficult for them to say, okay, in the first little while, let's not focus on buying a house. Let's focus on research and education. And so we go through a house, and even if they walk in and they're like, we hate this house, well, let's use this as education.
Right.
So this is what a broken window seal looks like. This is what a roof that needs replaced looks like. This is what water in a basement looks like, whatever it is. And they really start, because I feel like the more educated the buyer is, the easier my job is.
My job, I'm a litigation lawyer. It's kind of the same in a way. Mm-hmm. I do get people with certain expectations that you have to educate them about. But I do find that once they start that education process, then the frustration starts to leave too, because now they kind of get
exactly
where things are and where they're going.
Frustration, I think, comes from the unknown, and sort of that's where the fear comes in. And so, when my buyers come in and they learn so much, I feel like they feel more comfortable. And we've taken the pressure off where it's like, is the first house going to be the one? And how do we know? And it's like, we're not even going to talk about buying these houses for the next little while. We're doing research and we're learning about different styles of houses, different locations, different, and if they obviously find one that they love and they want to offer on it, that's great. Perfect. But we've removed that expectation, and I think it just relaxes everyone and gets them sort of more focused on learning about the house and not, oh, is this the one? Is this the one?
So what are a few of the topics? Like, I know you can't get through them all, but what are a few of the topics you talk about in that first meeting with them?
Well, budget is huge. Budget and expectations are huge, depending on whether they're going to buy a freehold, which is, a house or a semi. And then there's condominiums, which have a whole set of learning curves with condo fees and corporations. And, when you offer on a condominium, it's a little bit of a different process. So we talk about that. I go through all of the paperwork with my clients. I give them sample copies of it. I say, take it home. If you can't fall asleep one night, read it.
So you're talking about things like agreements of purchase and sale.
The agreement of purchase and sale, a buyer's representation agreement. I put in false clauses. I have sort of because things in real estate can happen very quickly. You found a house and offers are tonight at 7:00 and this is all happening so fast. And then you plunk down 20 pages of paperwork.
Right.
It can be very, very intimidating. So my clients have already seen the paperwork, and I say, you don't need to know how to fill it out. That's my job, but I want you to be comfortable with certain things. And then when we do get to the point where we write an offer, I always do the first one in person. So we once again go through all of the paperwork. Then after that, if they're comfortable with e-sign, we do that. So we do talk about that process. What happens, when I offer. Even I think sometimes people have no idea kind of what my role is. And I had one buyer say to me, so we'll find a house and then do we fill out the paperwork and hand it to you? And I said, well, that sounds wonderful, but I'm not sure what I'm getting paid for. Right. I find the house, I set up the appointments, I go through the house with you, I find out all the information. There's information on on my system that you can't see on, realtor.ca. So I find out all of that. All of that information comes from me. You just literally have to say, we like this house, and I'll do everything else.
Can you think of any kind of surprises that they have when you go through this?
Oh,
like things they're not expecting?
I think they don't expect how demanding it is physically and mentally. And I know that sounds silly, but it really, especially in this market that has been a seller's market for, last 5-6 years. If you're a buyer that thinks that we'll just go out on a Saturday afternoon and look at a couple houses, you probably are going to be in for a very long haul. They have to be ready to jump at a house and make themselves available to go see it. And if they want to bring their parents with them, then they've got to come quickly. Things are happening very quickly. And we could go out and look at 10s, 20s, 30, 40 houses, and maybe none of them is the one. Or maybe they've offered on a house, and it's easy to say don't get emotionally attached, but everybody does. They see themselves living there. And then if they lose in a multiple offer situation, it can be very upsetting and very draining.
I was lucky because when we went through the process, it wasn't that market.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty straightforward. There weren't many bidding wars. And I think I would have been devastated on a couple situations if things fell through. And I know our daughter had to bid on many, many houses and oddly got one where they didn't expect to get after not getting one they thought they'd get. So it must be grueling for people out there. But so let's skip forward because we're coming to the end. Let's say that everything finally does work.
Yep.
They've seen X number of houses and they put some bids in and they finally got everything done.
So exciting.
And now it's closing and they're standing in their house for the first day right after closing. What do they say? Like, how do they feel and act from what you can see? They're
so excited. So it's so funny because I just got a picture. So on closing day, they get the keys from the lawyer. They go and see the house. I don't go with them on closing. I go for a couple of days before for the final walkthrough. But I always say, please let me know that you've gotten in and everything looks okay, because we're the last ones to know that that's happened. And I got this really cute picture of them kissing in their new kitchen, saying, nice. We're in and we love it. And, so it's really exciting. And I know, it's a long process. And for some of them, it can be, a lot of ups and downs. So they're so excited when they finally go in. And then I wait about 2 or 3 weeks and then I go back go over for a visit, take a little gift and have a little visit. And it's so nice to see them in their house. And it's so funny how most of them will say, we're so glad, we were so disappointed when we lost on those other houses, but we're so glad we did because this is the house that we were meant to be in. And that's, it's really nice. It's the part of my job I love.
So you've done this, who knows, however many times, but
yeah.
How does it make you feel when you see that?
Amazing. I'm just as excited to make that phone call to say you got the house. I get so excited. I plan in my head, how am I going to say it? How are they going to react? And yeah, it's super exciting.
That's amazing. So we are toward the end. So we ask every guest the same question.
Okay.
So I'm going to hit you with it. It's in a context where we all have areas of wellness that are important to us, but there's not enough time to focus on all of them at any given time. Mm-hmm. So it's essentially a mini wellness check-in. Are you currently neglecting an area of wellness in your life? And if you are, can you think of even one thing you can do to foster wellness in that area?
Sleep.
Sleep?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm attached to my phone. It's part of my business. And I sometimes don't. I stay up trying to get things done. I get up early trying to get things done to sort of make my day a little bit easier. And then, after a while, it sort of weighs on you. So I should make sleep more of a priority, I think.
I have a couple anecdotes for you. One of them is last week, I don't know what I did, but I pulled a muscle kind of in my lower back. Mm-hmm. And it's really freaking me out because I love to run. I love to exercise. I need to run every week just because of the streak that I'm doing. And when it first happened, I'm like, I think this might lay me out for quite a while. But I really intentionally made sure I got a good night's sleep every night since then. And it's amazing. And I do this crazy thing. Sheila laughs at me, but I can't remember where I read an article about it once. But I imagine all these little construction workers fixing up my muscles and bones when I'm sleeping before I go to sleep.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, I feel markedly better every day.
Yeah.
And also, I just notice just generally because I'm getting this extra sleep, I'm just feeling so much better.
Yeah. Well, it's super important, and it's the one thing that we'll sacrifice to do other things, but it's the one thing that probably would make our day better. We would actually be more efficient if we just got that extra hour of sleep. I
keep mentioning a stat on the podcast too, which is another person I heard on a podcast. And after 2 hours of discussion, he's a specialist. And he said, look, it's very simple. Every single thing you do in your life, you do it worse if you didn't get enough sleep.
Right.
Everything.
Yeah.
So get enough sleep.
Yeah.
And the other quick point was I actually started leaving my phone downstairs.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you don't have it downstairs, it has to be in another room.
Right. Yeah.
And at first it was hard, but when I sleep now, my phone is not there. I can't even imagine looking at it.
Right.
Because it's not there.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm sleeping better. So just throw that out there for people to think about.
I'll try.
Well, thank you so much, Lynne. We'll do another interview. But in the meantime, this one was great. And it was great to hear a little bit about how you help first-time homebuyers.
Oh, thank you.
I'm Cameron, and welcome to another installment of the Adventures of the Starving Artist. In this segment, I don't have any cool career updates, I don't have any dilemmas, there's no drama, just a fun little story that happened between some musician friends and me this past weekend. On Saturday night, I decided, you know what? There are all these different projects that I could be doing. There's a lot of stuff that, I probably should be doing, but I'm just going to take a Saturday night off and be a person. Or not be a person, depending on how you look at it. I'm just checking out of real life for a hot minute. I'm going to drink a cold beer. I'm going to hang out with my friends, play some video games, just whatever I feel like, right? So I decided that evening that I'm going to jump on Discord, which is a platform my friends and I use to stay in touch. We stay connected when we play games or jam instruments remotely or whatever. And it's awesome because it's free, but also you can connect from your phone or your computer or whatever. So my buddy Matt, he jumps on with me and we're chatting about our day and whatnot. And he had just come back from checking out a performance by a performer named Joe Locke. Now Joe and Matt both play an instrument called the vibraphone. And if you're unfamiliar, it's kind of like a big giant xylophone with added complexity and nuance. And I'm sure that any vibe player would cringe at that description, but For the uninitiated, that paints a pretty accurate picture. So, I was hearing about this performance and how Matt was all inspired, and, vibes are a not super duper common instrument, so to hear someone's performance exclusively written around the vibraphone, very cool. And he was so moved by some of this music that he ended up purchasing a few of the transcriptions from the performer, including a piece designed for solo vibraphone. And this is what I wanted to tell you about. So we're sitting on our online chat, and it's just voice chat, so kind of like being on the phone, right? But it's good quality because we both have studio mics, so it's not, kind of grainy and doesn't sound like a phone. It sounds really high quality. And Matt says, do you want to hear one of the tunes that I've decided to learn? I'm like, okay. So he throws the score, like the sheet music, up on the screen, so I'm reading along, puts his mic next to his vibraphone, and just starts playing it. Super cool. It's not the first time we've used Discord to do that. In fact, when we were writing the Cambridge Ford jingle, JC and I used Discord, and we would jump on the same voice chat, but we also had extra channels for our guitars going directly in, so that we could say, well, what about this sort of a sound? And just play it, and it would go right through. Really great platform, and it's a great, cool piece of technology to have these days. Fun way to stay in touch, and in this case, a little private concert. That's all I've got for you today. Just a fun little interaction amongst some musician buddies on a night off, chilling out. Thank you very much for listening. Hope you have a great week. I'm Cameron. This is The Starving Artist. Until next time.
We love our listeners and thanks for joining us. Please help spread the word about Let's Be Well Together podcast. Follow us and rate us on Spotify, Apple, Google, or your favorite podcast platform. Follow us on Instagram at lets.be.well.together and let your friends know about us.
Move that body like we're meant to do.
Hi, everyone. It's Julie, and I'm here with Elise, and we are going to talk about something that is really unique. Well, some of you may have experienced it, but it's something new for us, and it's called forest bathing. Elise, have you ever heard of that before?
No, I have never heard of that, but it sounds magical.
I know, right? So a friend of mine, we were on a walk together, and she was talking about experiencing this forest bathing. So I'm like, I've got to do some research about this. But apparently it is a term that emerged in Japan as far back, I guess, as the 1980s. And they called it a physiological and psychological exercise. And apparently they started studying the benefits of this forest bathing. So it can be something as simple as just walking in a forest and you're conscientiously connecting to what's around you. Or there's now these more structured experiences where you can join guides, like trained guides, and they'll take you through a meditative ecotherapy session or excursion. This must have been what my friend, when she was talking about this forest bathing, she obviously went on one of the trained guides, but I thought it was interesting that it can just be as simple as walking in any natural environment, obviously the woods or the forest, if they're calling it forest bathing, but I thought it was really interesting and fascinating.
That is incredible. I do love that they emphasize being present. So making sure that you're not just walking, but you're actually being present within nature. I'm not sure the science behind it, but to me, it feels like you get so many more benefits when you're really noticing what's going on around you.
Yeah. And I'm looking at this one article that it's in the National Geographic, and it's called The Secret to Mindful Travel, A Walk in the Woods. And it's an article by Sunny Fitzgerald. But they're talking about the purpose of this forest bathing was to offer an echo antidote to tech boom burnout. So these days, right, we're talking a lot about burnout, and to inspire residents to reconnect with and protect the country's forests. So the two benefits, which going back to your point about reconnecting, when you're walking in the forest and just being mindful of the environment as well.
Of course. Wow, that's beautiful. It reminds me actually of my travels. I did have the opportunity to visit Japan. So I've been to Tokyo and Kyoto. And I remember visiting Tokyo, and they have this beautiful shrine that I went to see. And I was so surprised at the park. When you enter the park, you have to walk through a forest to get to the shrine. And I was really surprised to see that in a city that is so populated as Tokyo. So you can tell that they still value the importance of forests and green spaces within their cities in Japan. So it's something that they continue to practice. And it was just a beautiful walk. You were surrounded by beautiful trees, nice, big, large paths. And there were even people walking for weddings. So you could see wedding ceremonies as you were walking up towards the shrine, which was really neat.
It just puts you in such a positive mood when you're, when you get to experience that. And especially for individuals who may be living in the city. So I imagine, I've never been to Kyoto, but I imagine it's quite a large city. Again, having those green spaces, but, a forest within the city, and just recognizing the benefits of having those for your residents so that they are able to reconnect with nature.
Absolutely. And I just love this term, forest bathing. I think it sounds so fun. Instead of I'm going for a hike, I'm going to go bathe in the forest.
Bathe in the forest. Add a little bit of music to that. It could be a whole experience, right? And I wonder, actually, I'm curious of, signing up for an actual session and to what extent they take it that one step further. I don't know. Might be interesting to explore that.
Yeah, definitely something to check out.
Maybe we could do it together one day.
Would love that.
Yeah, awesome.
There's a thought. Popped up while running. A few things in life come easy, but most of the really good stuff doesn't come easy. So why did I think with wellness it might be different? Why did I think that there was some secret out there that I didn't know? Some magic way of becoming balanced, some magic way of becoming well. If someone would just let me in on the secret, it'd be awesome. I feel like I know what the secret is now, and it's hard work, but that's okay because it's doable. There's a lot to think about in my approach. I have to introspect. I have to be self-aware, and that takes time. I have to make time for that. And that's okay. I can make time for that. And then there's 8 categories of wellness I'm thinking about, and many activities associated with each area of wellness. So when you kind of sketch it all out, whether you do that on paper, on a computer, or just mentally keeping notes to yourself, there are a lot of moving pieces to this. So again, what do? Do we throw our arms up and say, oh, it's too hard? Well, maybe some people do, but you don't have to. It's just a matter of knowing that even though it's complex, even though there's a lot to think about, we can do it if we take the time to try and sketch things out, to figure out what we need to do, to figure out who we are. We keep taking steps forward. And sometimes there's steps back, but we keep moving forward. And then we take more time for wellness and we figure something else out. And we keep checking in. What are we missing? What do I have to bring back in? What do I have going that's making me feel so good? Let me celebrate that. I often keep coming back to the concept we talked about with Al Torgman about Stephen Covey's 4 quadrants and taking time to go into that not urgent but important category. And that helps me a lot when I start to think, ooh, this is really hard, this is really complex. Again, yeah, it's complex, but doable. And that makes all the difference. I would rather have something hard to do that I can achieve. And I've learned in running marathons that something I used to think was impossible is possible. And that something that sounds like it may not be doable is doable. And if I keep moving forward even through the hard times, I will get to the end. And so I would rather have something that's hard to achieve and doable than either no possibility at all or sitting around waiting to win the lottery as if wellness is going to come to me as a lucky break, which I don't think is going to happen.
Yeah. Just let me say, flip side of the coin.
Are you feeling it?
Oh, I'm so feeling it. I feel like this is the first time we sat down in weeks.
What is going on?
I know. Sometimes you just get caught in this rat race. It seems like you're literally a rat on a wheel going nowhere. Just going and going and going.
Kind of. I mean, I do feel like I'm getting a lot done. It's just like, what the heck? Why do I have to do everything all at once? Why is everything super busy all at the same time?
I know. I don't know if everyone else is having that issue, but I think for us, because the wedding took up so much of our time, it kind of pushed everything else back. And then having our Collingwood place going there just really made everything else at home and work and all these things. And they all just came up together and it's like, you can't handle it.
We had to get ready for the wedding and then the post-wedding stuff. And then part about the Collingwood was, yes, we got to enjoy it, but we had to get it ready for somebody who's moving in for a few months.
Yeah.
There was that. And that's always like checklist this, checklist that. You're painting, you're doing all this other stuff. And then stuff around the house.
Yeah, because when you go up to Collingwood, you're not here for 2 days or 3 days. Then you come back and you've got all these other things that you got to do here.
And by coincidence, a bit of a spoiler alert, I got behind on the podcast stuff too. So I have to set up interviews and that's always really tricky. And I don't know, I'm stuck right now because what happens is I'm like, oh, that would be a good idea. That would be a good idea. And I write it down. But for some reason, I'm not pulling the trigger on contacting people.
Yes, that really surprises me.
I'm tired. Right?
Yes.
And then we were at the condo and I tweaked a muscle in my back. So this week for me is like the big rat race because I hurt my back on the weekends. And luckily it started healing really quickly. Don't know how because I'm an old guy.
You're not that old.
But it was getting materially better every day. So I'm like, okay. And then I rode a bike this week and that's okay. So I think I can run soon. And I'm going to do that. But I wasn't running. Another weird thing is I'm not making bread. Like that's something.
Yeah, what happened? I was going to comment on that. I hadn't had any bread all week.
I usually make.
That is not fair.
I usually make bread 3 times a week. Sheila really likes it.
And I refuse to buy bread now.
Right.
Because it's just not good enough.
And then work just totally heated up.
Yes.
Craziness.
Absolutely crazy
so
at work.
It just feels like every day is the same thing. I wake up, do a couple things before work, go to work. The phone rings off the hook or the emails are going crazy and stressed out. I do that. I come home. I should make bread. I'm too tired. I can't run. I'm exhausted. Then we wake up and do it all over again.
And then it's like Groundhog Day over and over and over. And for me, I'm back to work, of course, but the gardens, right? Because we were gone and they just grow like weeds and the pool got open. So there's just so many things that I had to get everything outside, get all the decorations and all the decor, and then you got to get all the plants. And like, I feel like I've been going and going and can't stop.
Especially because you're working at least 3 days a week. And so you really only have 2. Anyway, there's no answer here. The only thing I can think though is just like in these situations, what I tend to do is just keep my head down and keep going and try and get through it. But I do think I need to kind of kickstart myself on a couple of things. Thankfully, I think I can go for a run today.
Yes.
So that'll help. And that'll make my mind feel better.
Yes.
And if I just start to pull the trigger on some of the podcast stuff, that'll get me ahead of the curve and that'll calm down. And I just think it was a coincidence that last week was a busy week.
Yeah, busy. But you do have to stop for a second and take a break and think and listen and figure out what you need. Because I definitely went to bed early almost every single day and tried to get my sleep because I was concerned that I was getting a little bit of sunstroke being outside the whole time. But yeah, so take some time to take care of yourself when you're on that rat race.
I hate admitting when Sheila's right about stuff.
He does, actually. And it's weird
I don't
because
like
I'm right almost all the time.
I don't like admitting anything. I'm a lawyer. I never admit anything, okay? But I have, in the last 6 months, been starting to buy into this going to bed early thing. And it's really kind of life-changing. Like, I feel so much better. So, good example was, we're recording this on a Saturday after this crazy busy week. And I finally got to the end of Friday, and thankfully, I kind of got to the point I needed to get at for all this work files where I could just breathe.
Right. Like, it's out of your hands.
It's okay over the weekend. I have till Monday to deal with stuff. And so I got home, and I was tired and all that stuff, but I'm like, you know what? I'm going to have a beer, which I don't often do. So I had a beer. We relaxed. Sheila was exhausted, so she went to bed early. And then I was going to hang out, watch TV.
Do whatever.
But I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go to bed early too. So I went to bed and I woke up this morning and right now I feel amazing. We got up. We sat on the back porch in some rocking chairs and listened to the birds. And okay, so we're having this crazy rat race, but it is still possible to find a moment of peace.
Agreed.
Please remember that we're not providing advice. We hope to inspire you to work towards balance, and we urge you to consult with qualified people if you need advice. The people on the show are speaking in their personal capacities. Their views expressed are their own, and don't represent the views or opinions of their outside contacts, their employers, or anyone else. We try to get things right, but we can't guarantee everything we say is correct, or that the things we talk about will work for you. Let's be well together, and let's be sure to do that in a safe way. It's sign-off time, and it's John here with Sheila and Elise.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
You'll have just heard the flip side episode where we talked about how busy Sheila and I were last week. So there's no sense repeating that, and I won't do that. Something pretty cool, though, did happen, which was I had to get back out in the backyard as we're setting everything up. Sheila's been doing a ton of work with gardening and patio stuff, and my job over the weekend initially was to put up this kind of 10 by 10 canopy thing that we have with a screen, and I did that. And the next day we went to the garden shop and we planted some flowers. And because I was busy outside that whole time, it seemed to really kind of kick things in terms of being healthy and feeling healthy and bending and moving and all that stuff. So I had a great weekend getting back out in the yard, and I think it's going to be fun getting back out and reminding myself that that kind of gardening and yard work and stuff is really healthy.
Yeah, it counts. Yeah, as moving that body.
Yeah. How about you, Elise?
Well, actually, I just planted my vegetable garden.
Ooh.
So something very similar. So that was pretty exciting. We have tomatoes, peppers, some herbs. So we're really excited about that. And then we also had our very first campfire.
Oh.
So we got a portable campfire, fire pit.
Yeah.
So we had our first campfire outside. So I think I'm kind of channeling summer already.
Nice.
Okay, can I give you a little warning? Sheila and I got one of those one time, those kind of fire pit things you can just put on your grass. Did not know it, but you can light your grass on fire if they get too hot.
Yeah.
We put down a mat. We bought a fire
good.
mat for our grass.
Good.
Beautiful.
We did not. We literally under the fire, the grass was burning, and
I'm that idiot.
Mm-hmm. So then we moved it much farther away from the house and fixed it. But anyways,
that's all part of the learning curve, eh?
yeah, that is so exciting, Elise.
How about you, Sheila? What do you have going on?
Okay, well, I have a few things. One, I wanted to say you got the pool opened. Yay.
Woohoo.
And we've been in swimming, so that's exciting. And I actually took care of my niece for the first time ever. So she's 5 years old, and I had her for a PD day, and we went to see The Little Mermaid. Ooh. Yeah, so that was exciting. I really enjoyed it. And I love Disney, love going to all the Disneys, and I don't have any young kids to take. So that was really great that I had her. So I really enjoyed that. And I did my first wedding this weekend. So that was fun too, getting back into the grind of doing weddings. I actually worked a wedding because I do a catering. So that's one of my most favorite things to do is cater weddings. I just love the excitement and the outfits and the bands and whatever options that they do at these things. And so much fun to see. Anyway, so I did that this weekend, and that was fun. And that's it for me. Very exciting. We're all getting into the summer groove by the sounds of things. I hope everyone enjoyed the podcast, and we will catch you next week. That is it for today's show. Please try and make wellness a priority.
You deserve it.
If you feel the need to talk to someone or ask for help, please do that.
Accept yourself for the person you are.
So long.
Adieu.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Goodbye.